Hello and welcome to a series I'd like to call The Professional Insider, a weekly podcast where I talk to people in particular and perhaps peculiar professions, getting a glimpse into their work and into their lives. I'm your host, Helen Tez-Chandler. Today's profession concerns Krav Maga, a fighting system that combines techniques from boxing, wrestling, judo and karate, just to name a few. Krav Maga was initially developed for the Israeli Defense and Security Forces. I'm talking to Raphael Yadgaroff today, a Krav Maga instructor, to discuss the self-defense system.
So I went to Krav Maga when I was 15, 16. I pretty much just turned 16. I actually got in a fight in Primrose Hill in London. I don't know if you know the park.
Oh, wow, yeah.
So me and my friends were just up there, doing the usual teenager thing, sitting around, drinking, having a laugh. And some kids came up to us and kind of like politely mugged us, I guess is probably the best way. They're like, "Oh, can we have some of your drinks?" And "Oh, that's a nice phone. Can you give us your phone?" And it kind of started to be, obviously when they started asking for the phones, it was all a little bit rough. So my mate ended up just basically like jumping on one of them and instigating a fight. And I remember there was about 10 of us, and there's about 3 of them. And I stood up because I was like, "Oh, my mate's in a fight, that means get involved and help, right?" Mm-hmm. None of my friends, no one else even stood up or reacted, to be fair.
Oh, wow.
My stepdad boxed, and he had kind of shown me a little bit of boxing, but we are talking like less than a lesson's worth of boxing. Right? Basically, you just like put your hands up in front of your face, right?
Right.
My mate gets hit in the face, his nose broken, and so he runs off and just kind of leaves me there. And I'm like surrounded by these 3 guys, and I just remember being like, no idea what to do. One of them kind of came from the side and like punched me in the face, and I remember like thinking like, "Oh no, this is really bad." And I heard this like crap, and luckily the guy just started screaming, obviously, and just like holding his hand and just like absolutely mental. So and he obviously broke his hand. I actually was okay. Luckily, one of my friends, she actually did get up, and basically she was like not big as in like weight, but she was a very tall girl. Like we were 16-year-olds. She was like 6'2". She was
wow.
Like he kind of comes and these guys starts pushing away and tells them to get lost, and they run off. Anyway, so I had this realization of one, people aren't going to protect you. 2, I actually didn't know how to fight. Like every guy walks around thinking they're 4,000% more effective in the street than they actually are, right?
Okay.
They'll see themselves like an anime character or like Neo in the Matrix, take on hundreds of people, just need to fight, just have the heart.
Whereas in reality, it's not really that.
In reality, you're going to... Am I allowed to swear on this podcast?
Of course you can.
Cool. You're going to shit yourself. You're going to get a huge adrenaline dump. If you're not used to an adrenaline dump like that, your body can, just react really badly. You freeze, you hesitate, which are the things you don't want to do. You think, "Oh, I'll run," but your legs feel like cement. So I basically was like, well, I need to kind of sort this out and figure something out. And my mate who started the fight and ran off, he kind of had the same realization as me, because he ran off because they broke his nose. So we went to our biology teacher, of all people, and he turned out to be a Krav Maga instructor.
Oh, wow.
So we just were like, "Hey, can you teach us some stuff?" And this was 2006, so health and safety in schools wasn't quite as aggressive as it was then. So he just started a class, and it was the first thing. I was never a sporty kid, but it was the first thing that I was actually good at. So I wasn't hugely academically great. I wasn't sporty. I just played a lot of video games and messed around. That's all I really did. But I actually kind of have a bit of a knack for it. So that's kind of how I got into it. That's what, like I say, it's the first thing you're good at as a kid, and especially at that age, you really kind of attach onto that and becomes a passion.
And then what sort of really inspired you to become an instructor? Were you sort of training for it that much that you thought, well, this is something that I'd like to pass on to others?
Yeah, so becoming an instructor basically was, I've been doing it for like 2 years at this point. So I was 18, and I was good. I was training like 6-7 hours of Krav Maga a week. I was going to like Tuesday after school sessions, Friday afternoon game sessions, sometimes on a Wednesday and again on a Sunday. I was going pretty much to every class I could get my hands on. And like I said, it was something I was good at. And I kind of just saw the potential. I was like, you know what, like, I'd like to do the instructor's course, one, to see if I could. I heard it was really tough. And, so I could teach. I was about to go off to uni. And I thought, hey, do I want to be working a student job, in like a bar or doing the usual student job stuff that you would do? I was like, you know what, I'd much rather be teaching each other, people to punch and kick each other and defend themselves, especially because over the past couple of years, I noticed that I've gone from quite a timid kid to extremely confident, right? And not like arrogant, but just confidence within myself, whether or not I could actually fight. But as in just the confidence it gave me meant that conflict was suddenly much easier to control. You get taught a lot of conflict management techniques and just, presence, confidence, tone of voice. These are all better self-defense techniques than knowing how to punch someone in the face almost, because you can de-escalate 99% of the fights, right? You just don't be a dick.
Sounds quite simple.
Yeah, right. It really is that simple. Most fights can be avoided. Very rarely do you actually have to fight. So yeah, it was just something I thought I'll do the instructor course, see if I can do it. I heard it didn't have a great pass rate. It was only like 60 or 70% pass. It's a challenge in itself, and also if I did get it, it's something I could do while at university.
How long were you an instructor for?
I mean, well, I guess I still am. So, I don't, you don't lose the knowledge, but I qualified when I was 18. Now, normally you have to be 21 before they let you on the course, but my instructor basically called up the head instructor and was like, look, he's 18, he's got his head on straight, let him do it, give him a go. I wouldn't put him forward as a candidate that I had taught if I didn't think he was capable of passing it. Right. So the guy was like, all right, let's do it. And I went on it, and actually I think I came third. It was either third or fourth.
Oh, wow.
As in marks wise, it's not like a competition. And so my score was actually like third or fourth. I remember losing to one was an ex-Blackwater mercenary who was there. So he'd been working with Blackwater out in Afghanistan and Iraq. So
that's understandable then.
Yeah, ex-Royal Marine, just ultimate badass type. Really, really good guy. And then the other one was, I can't remember his name for the life of me, I did come fourth. There was three of them, these three guys, yeah. So it was, he was a sergeant in the parachute regiment and a PT instructor with the army, stuff like that. So again, ultimate badass kind of type. I had a background in, I believe, boxing and a little bit of kickboxing. And then the other guy was like a third dan jiu-jitsu black belt, not Brazilian jiu-jitsu, but old school jiu-jitsu. So again, a lot of what we were learning was second nature to him already. It was just rehashed versions of the same movements. I came from a purely 2-year Krav Maga background, learning the same stuff that I was learning on sports. And yeah, I loved it. It was excellent.
Whilst you were instructing, what was it like? So was it like group class that you would take on, or was it more one-to-one stuff?
I did pretty much everything by the end of it. So I did privates to start with, because it's one of the easiest ways to start bringing kind of people in. And I did that while I was still doing just kind of on the arse end of my A-levels during the exam period and also the summer for uni. So I did a couple of privates and whatnot, which were good fun, especially at that age as well. So, it's great money. You're charging like 40, 50 quid for an hour and a half session. And, like at 18 in those days, it's excellent. So I started getting a bit of a taste for it, and I was like, oh, it's something I'd love to do. So when I went to uni, I looked for Krav Maga classes, to be honest, around me, and I didn't find any. So I called up a martial arts centre called the Fighting Iron Centre of Excellence down in Whitstable in Kent, owned by a guy called Leo Alderman. And Leo Alderman is like probably one of the best people I know. He gave an 18-year-old brand new martial arts instructor a chance to go home a lot of that. And gave him a call, and I just told him that I'd just done this Krav Maga instructor's course. I wanted to come down and train at his gym anyway, because I also did a little bit. I was starting to get into MMA and jiu-jitsu and kickboxing kind of stuff. So I was asking him about his classes for that, and then also kind of as a side was like, look, I'm also doing this, so do a class. I was like, yeah, I should go ahead. So I started a public class. So I was teaching quite a lot of people. Well, I was teaching quite a lot of people. The class started. I'd have 2-3 students, 4 or 5. And some of them would leave, you get a few replacements. And I did that for about the first half of uni, just kind of public classes really with several students. Then, more and more people started coming to me for private sessions. I redid my site. Basically, I say I redid it. I actually got a website, and that made a huge difference. I managed to go onto like the first page of Google for Krav Maga Kent and stuff like that. So I was getting quite, and this is again 2006, so really good. Well, it's 2008, 2009 by now. So really, really good traction and good kind of PR and branding, right? From there, I started getting more, I guess, contract work. So I got contracted by several schools in the Kent area to come in and do self-defense sessions for their kids, whether that was like a one-off or even, I'll do it as a games activity, much like I was taught. I actually taught a whole range of students. So the youngest I can teach is 14. So that was the youngest I ever taught, but all the way from 14 to 18. Students just generally, I taught students that had history with domestic violence, abuse, all the bad stuff, to kind of help work them out. A lot of female victims as well from just general stuff, kind of under 25s, like women's support. And then had a couple of kind of bouncers, military guys come and ask me to do it. I was in the Army Reserves and the TA as well. A lot of Krav Maga instructors are like, oh, I've taught the Army and Special Forces and all this. It's like, just because someone is in the Army doesn't mean you've taught the Army. But I mean, I could quite easily sit here and say, oh, yeah, I taught Krav Maga to the British Army. But it was really just taught it to the OTC. Basically a bunch of students playing weekend warriors, which is great fun. So I've taught everywhere. I've taught a whole kind of range. I actually also taught out in Egypt during the revolution in 2014.
Okay.
So I got hired by, he owns a huge oil and shipping company in Egypt.
I see.
And basically he was getting into Krav Maga and wanted his, he had a lot of money. So he wanted his own personal Krav Maga instructor. I kind of just follow him around and teach him when he wanted to be taught. So he got in touch with me for another instructor that he knew and offered it to, but wasn't able to do it. I was like, well, actually, I do know this one guy, Rat, who would be super keen. And by this point, I kind of monopolized the Krav Maga industry in the whole of the Kent area, used it to pay my way through university. So I had a good reputation. Any other instructors that tried to kind of start classes in the Kent area, their classes would always not do very well because everyone would come to me. If they would go to him and then come to me after, and they'd always choose me after because, again, there are a lot of instructors out there that are just teaching for their ego, very aggressive, maybe not actually that great. A lot of kind of like wannabes in the industry. Now, I'm not saying I was the best, but I was definitely probably one of the better teachers out there for it. To be a good fighter is one thing. To be a good teacher is entirely different. And the best way to prove that is look at the coaches who train UFC fighters and boxers. Right? They're the guys teaching the best fighters, but the fighters aren't the best teachers. So I went out to Egypt. I was only there for a few weeks, again, like it was during the revolution, kind of on the arse end of it. So it wasn't too violent, but it was a little bit too hairy for me, especially as a Jew with a tattoo in Hebrew.
Right.
Actually, a Krav Maga tattoo because it's an Israeli martial art.
Mm-hmm.
There's not really a connection with religion, but obviously, the questions come. When you're dealing with the Muslim Brotherhood trying to overthrow the Egyptian government, an expat Jewish boy is definitely not really welcome in the area. I ended up coming back, and and even the guy who owned the company, he came back to the UK as well and stayed here just because it was a little bit too hairy out there for him.
Why do you think it's so popular? It sounds like you've come across a swathe of different people from different backgrounds with different experiences. Why do you think Krav Maga is the one that they go to? Because surely there's so many other options of self-defense and ways to sort of learn how to fight or learn how to defend yourself. So why is Krav Maga the one that people go to?
I mean, Krav Maga is known as well, mainly for the branding, really. It's had excellent branding. It's used by the Israeli army, which makes people, there's a huge amount of legitimacy that people like. The people that started Krav Maga really knew how to market it using that kind of off the back. This is a military self-defense system. And Krav Maga as well, like just the way it was designed and the way it's taught is it's meant to be a very, very simple, very, very quick way of learning to get to an efficient level of defense quickly, right? So, you're not going to be able to go and get in a ring with a boxer or a cage fighter or a kickboxer and basically, be on par with them after 3-4 months of training Krav. But you'll be in a position where you've got the basic concepts of how to deal with a variety of weapons, multiple attackers, general striking, general kind of takedowns, control, stuff like that. So, I mean, I don't know if you know too much about the history of Krav Maga, but the history of Krav Maga was, was developed for the Israeli army. And, they've only got a certain amount of time to bring their soldiers, to do the basic training for their soldiers. So they needed something that was quick, simple, and effective. And that's kind of how Krav Maga was developed. And it took different things that worked from different martial arts and basically just combined them into something that would work, that works for military types or people in the street, which is the best way to approach martial arts is that kind of pick and choose, pick and mix kind of variation. Bruce Lee was one of the first people to, you could argue, invent Krav Maga in a sense, because Krav Maga is basically just it's ready for fight. Oh, no, it's been so long since.
Contact combat, is it?
Yes, it's basically the Israeli word. It's like I'm doing fighting. That's basically the same kind of word, right? But it's not like it's a specific thing. It is essentially just fighting, learning how to fight. And if you're going to learn how to fight, you learn what works, right? So, they took elements from judo, boxing, jiu-jitsu, kickboxing, karate, I guess, is striking aspects. And, kind of put it all together into one simple syllabus for people to learn, which is a huge draw for the public. So a lot of people will kind of want to learn to defend themselves and learn to fight. But, I've learned pretty much every martial art under the sun. And it takes a long time to get good at it. Like to really be a very effective fighter, it takes a long time to learn. You can't go to a boxing class once a week for 3 months and expect to be good at boxing. Like you'll learn a little bit, but you're 1%. You know what I mean? Like there's so much out there that you won't learn. Whereas with Krav Maga, you can kind of get thrown in the deep end and you get taught something or a specific, not technique, but a specific concept. So like, okay, someone puts a gun in your face. Now we have a technique for it. But it's more of a concept, right? It doesn't really matter how you defend yourself or take this gun. The concepts remain the same, right? Concept 1, get out of the line of fire. Step 2, control the weapon. Step 3 is take the weapon. Now, it doesn't matter, in a way, it doesn't really matter what you do to do that. But if you do it in that order, if you get out of the line of fire, get control of the weapon, and then you take the weapon, you'll be good. If you don't do one of those, you're not going to be good. So, within 1 or 2, 3 lessons, you can learn quite effectively a general idea of how to defend yourself against someone with a gun. Right? Not going to attack that's just being shot 10, 15 meters away. As in like somebody putting a gun in your face, threatening, trying to get money and whatnot. Same with striking. Like you're not going to sit there and learn every single little tweak, boxing, kickboxing and timing and all that stuff. What you are going to learn is basic striking, basic defenses, basic movements, and again, concepts for a street fight. If you're against more than 2 people, for instance, you want to keep them lined up. Don't let them both come at you at once. Keep one behind the other. And that's simple. There's, you look at the United States Marine combat manuals of how to engage enemies in close combat fights. And it's the same concepts, right? They don't, the book doesn't show you how to fight really, but it shows you positioning. Like if you've got 3 guys in front of you, keep moving to the side, keep them in a line. And it's much easier to fight one-on-one. It is real.
Do you think those are the main misconceptions of Krav Maga then? That people don't really understand the nuances behind it? It's not as simple as, like you said, going to a class maybe once a week and then saying that Krav Maga is much more detailed and complex than that.
Yes. Krav Maga is very, very good for getting you up to speed in a quick time to an acceptable level of being able to defend yourself. But there does become a point where, because Krav Maga is not a focused system on one specific talent of fighting, it does eventually start to kind of taper off. So if you've got years to invest into your training and development, you should definitely learn Krav Maga. But, you'll get more from doing boxing for 5 years and becoming a really great striker. But most people don't want to learn 5 years worth of martial arts before they feel they're confident to fight, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is why I've kind of transitioned away from Krav Maga, because I feel like I've taken most of what I can take from Krav Maga. And I did that for about 45 years, teaching and stuff like that. And I realized that one of the best ways to kind of supplement that training was doing more other martial arts that Krav Maga took from originally. So, going back and doing boxing, going to do Muay Thai and kind of tightening up the concepts that I've learned from Krav Maga. But that's kind of what it all brings people in, is that it's that basic system. You can kind of jump straight in, and you can do that 3 or 4 months, and you can at least walk out in a position where you will be able to defend yourself.
As far as I understand it, there's certain levels and belts to Krav Maga. Can I ask what belt you are or what level you are?
By all means, but I'm not a belt in Krav Maga. So there's, unfortunately, one of the killers of Krav Maga is the politics behind it. You find it in a lot of martial arts generally anyway. So like you look at different foundations and like BJJ foundations and boxing, kickboxing. Basically, there's several variations of Krav Maga. When I was younger, there was IK, IKMA, International Krav Maga Association, and then there was IKMF, which is the International Krav Maga Federation. Entirely different, even to the point of having actual different techniques. I actually learned one way back in the day called CKM, which is Commando Krav Maga. And, in my one, we had levels. That was it. There was 8 actual levels that you could accomplish, but there were really 10. And the whole idea of level 9 and 10 was that even when you get to level 8, because of the constantly evolving nature and change of the system, it's that whole idea is you never master it. It's more conceptual of like a then thing, I guess. So I got to level 3 with that one. And I got a level 1 in control and restraint for law enforcement. So that was like using handcuffs and batons. I didn't actually get like a level in it, but tactical knife fighting. So like, it's not really kind of something I ever taught. It was just more of a bit of fun for me. It was just learning how to like fight using a knife, which was kind of cool. So yeah, that was my level. So I guess whatever level 3 would be the equivalent of.
Did you use a lot of weaponry and a lot of, I guess, objects whilst learning / teaching Krav Maga?
In what way did you mean use? In like how to use them to fight back or to defend against them?
Yes, essentially. When I'm sort of visualize self-defense classes, I sort of visualize more physical contact between sort of 2 people, like hands and legs and bodies being used rather than specific objects being used. But is that specific to Krav Maga?
Yes. There's a lot of weapon martial arts out there in the world. And again, Krav Maga has taken aspects of those to use. But first of all, Krav Maga is a military-based system. So a lot of the basic military Krav Maga is actually using a rifle in a defensive manner. Basically, all you're trying to do is get out of the close combat situation with the rifle, but then shoot the guy. There's no point messing around. You've got a gun,
Right.
And again, one of the main things of Krav Maga is the idea of surviving, right? It's not a sport. It's not about getting in the ring with your opponent and one-upping them on points. It really is about, it doesn't matter if you get beaten the crap out of, you get home safe and you get home in a situation that you could be dead. Well done. Congratulations, you win, man. Couldn't go any better. You're home and you're not dead. So improvised weapons is a big part of it. I actually remember for my level 3 test, picking up, I remember because you basically just like stand in the middle and like a load of people attacking one-on-one with one at a time with different attacks that you kind of learn. I ran off the mat and I literally went and picked up what was it? It was like a weights bench. You know the weights benches? It was a light one, don't worry, it wasn't like a big one. And I used that as a defense, right? I mean, one of the best defenses against a knife is a chair. Like, honest to God, a chair, I mean, you could mess someone up with a chair, you know what I mean? And it's a barrier. Like, if someone has a weapon, they're going to have an advantage. Put it in this situation, right? If you had a 12-year-old, right, and an adult man, and you were like, right, they're going to fight. Who's going to win?
The adult man, I would say.
The adult man, yeah. Bigger, stronger, definitely probably going to win. Give that kid a knife. And then suddenly, it gets a bit grey.
The scales kind of change,
Yeah, right. I mean, he's still got the size, but the kid's also got a knife, right? Mm-hmm. You get 2 human adults. One of them's got a knife, female, male, doesn't even matter. That advantage is going to the person's weapon. The knife is the great equalizer. So why would you, again, it's not a sport, there's no rules, and you're fighting to not die. Mm-hmm. So why would you not use everything at your disposal to make that happen, to not die? Throw anything, throw your keys at them, throw your wallet at them. I mean, ironically, if they're mugging you and you use your wallet to defend yourself, you probably should have just given it up in the first place. But, whatever you've got, use it. Keys in your hands, put them in your fist and make them count, anything and everything. When it comes to like training, you don't pick up an improvised weapon every single time because otherwise you're not learning what you need to learn. But you just need to be aware of, like, in reality, that's your definite go-to. Right? It's like to run away. 2 is concept 1, run away. Right? Problems with running away, like I could be faster with you. You could have crappy fitness. I was jumped by 4 guys in Thailand. And I'm a quite heavy smoker, so I'm probably even going to have a cigarette while we're on the podcast at some point. I managed to fight off 3 of them, and then the 4th one came, who was about 150 pounds of literal Viking muscle. Right? He was like a Swedish guy. And I remember being like, now is the time to leave, because I just managed to disengage these 3 guys. One of them was on the floor, the other one was like dealing with his eye, and the other one I hadn't got my hands on him yet. And I literally remember turning around to start jogging and my ass just so tired. I was like, it's actually going to be easier for me to stand here and fight this guy. But that was a terrible choice. I knew I wouldn't be able to necessarily beat this guy. But I didn't have the fitness to run away. And if I started running and that guy hits me in the back of the head or pulls a weapon out when I'm not looking, now he's chasing me with a knife, I'm not even aware, right? I've seen videos of one of those, like a concept video we got sent years ago of people running away from knife attackers, just being stabbed back repeatedly. And you're like, okay, so that you can't always run away. You know what I mean?
Right.
Don't get me wrong. Fighting a dude with a knife, that's low survival rate, right? But you've got to do something, right? So you better have those options. And if you can't run away, you'll have to fight.
Do you think that's any sort of issues with the way that Krav Maga is taught? Seeing as from your position, from what you know, what you've learned, what you've taught, would you change any aspect of Krav Maga and how it's sort of introduced to people?
Yeah, so there's a lot of the problem with Krav Maga and why I've stepped away from it so far over the past few years. Even though I'm a massive advocate for it, I also feel like they should do other martial arts, like as I said before, to supplement and to work on it. I learned to punch in Krav Maga, great. Then make sure you go to a few boxing classes, and they'll really tighten that punch up for you. Go to some jiu-jitsu classes and learn a little bit of better ground game, just so you're more aware of what's out there and train up. But the way I used to teach is very as realistic as I could. I used to walk into my class and think, how can I prepare my students to best fight, defend themselves in the street? Which you'd think would be the normal thinking for a self-defense teacher, right? That would be the normal question you ask yourself before you think of a lesson plan or what you're going to teach your students. What do these guys need to know? But it's not the case anymore. You get systems where they introduce belts and it becomes more about money. It's about building the student up for a syllabus very, very slowly in a methodical way, charging them crazy fees, contracts, prescribed uniform, and all this stuff. And then these students train for 6 months and honest to God, they're no good.
So it's become quite commercialized rather than what the core of Krav Maga is actually about.
Yeah, 100%. And in that, it's diluted the system to not be as effective it was. It's scary to be taught how to fight because you then realize what you're actually preparing for. And that is scary. And even the training is scary because you've got to get used to it. But people don't want that. I taught in a gym in central London. It was a class that my mate was running, and he was a very kind of like quiet guy. But one of the most technical instructors I ever met, but he wouldn't really teach them too aggressively or too hard. It was more just like kind of knew that these guys are like working all day, they're bankers, they're just here kind of to say that they're doing this class. So they teach them quite softly. Whereas I went in there and I was like, right, we need to teach them. So I was like, right, guys, you need to do this, this, and this. And they didn't respond. They complained about me to the manager, and he almost lost the Krav Maga position. He didn't mind because he knew that he was like, oh yeah, I should have told you that they're like quite like passive in a way. So to tone it down. But the problem is the second you start catering, because it's a business, you're catering to keep students and make money. You're losing what makes Krav Maga in the first place. And I feel that a lot of Krav Maga classes and a lot of Krav Maga institutions are like that now. That's why I don't train it, because I can't find an instructor. I could teach my own class, but I keep going to these classes and they're all the same. They're all like, okay, yeah, did you enjoy your first class? And I'm like, yeah, it was really good. And they're like, okay, you ready to sign up? And it's like, here's your contract. Here's all the stuff you need. And I can already see that most of the students are there, like, they're more into the t-shirt that they get with the color of their level than they are whether they're enough they can fight. So the commercialization of it has definitely diluted what it really should be. Again, you do get that with kind of a lot of martial arts. There's some kickboxing gyms and it's the same story. But it's because a lot of people don't actually want to learn to fight. It's a hard skill to learn it, and like I said, it requires a lot of investment of time and also a lot of mental investment and toughening up, basically.
Dedication,
most people aren't cut out for that. So if you want to make money, you've got to make it softer and more approachable. The problem with that is can't make preparing for a fight more approachable. You just can't. You have to learn to fight.
Do you really believe that, though, in the sense of if, say, a 16-year-old came up to you, someone that's a young person in general, 21st century young person, do you think it's a really necessary skill for them to learn how to fight? From hearing your stories, I can see a sort of trend where you've been in scenarios that have meant that it's a sort of fight or flight equation.
Look, there is a huge argument, and I agree hugely with this, that when you're a hammer, every problem becomes a nail, right? So if you know how to fight, that's a way that you can resolve problems, rightly or wrongly. However, I know it's not a realistic standard, but yeah, I think everyone should learn to be able to defend themselves. or have a basic understanding. Because why would you not want to? Like, I don't think there's a person in the world that says that they've not ever come into conflict or had a situation where they felt physically intimidated or scared. I mean, whether or not their fights occurred, like I said, most of the time a fight can disengage, but there's always like, well, what if they did in that time? Would you have been able to do anything about it? What would have been your choices? What, curl up into a ball and die? Scream and hope that you get away? I mean...
But surely the other opposite end of that is that you're so confident and cocky, perhaps, that you've got this, and then it kind of escalates to a point where more fists are being thrown, people then just jump into the mix that weren't really involved in the initial fight, and it can kind of become a brawl that you don't really have control over.
Yeah, I mean, a fight's a risk. You're not going to win every single time, right? But this is why you're not. You shouldn't ideally be instigating the fights, right? It's a self-defense method. Like, the fight's instigated, and you don't have a choice. If someone pulls a knife out and stabs you, you say, "Well, I didn't agree to be stabbed." You've still been stabbed.
It doesn't. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can be in a peaceful protest, and suddenly you're in the mix of a bunch of police and protesters, rioters, and whatnot, and it wasn't your choice. It wasn't you that instigated it, but you're now a part of it. I'd rather have something and not need it than need it and not have it. But again, and I know that whole like hammer nail thing, there is an element that if you learn it, people kind of will be more likely to use it and maybe use it in an incorrect manner. But unfortunately, like with everything in life, there's always a few bad eggs. Some people are going to do bad things with the skills that they learn. You can apply that to literally anything. The government, banking, self-defense, fighting, boxing, kickboxing. Anyone with a skill or power over another person, eventually you're going to find one or two or even 3 or 4 or thousands, depending on the numbers. But that number will always be there. There will always be that percent. I had plenty of people come to my Krav Maga classes. They were basically just brawlers that want to learn how to fight even better when they got in their weekly fight on their piss-ups.
How did that make you feel, knowing that they wanted to come and learn? Were you a bit hesitant, or were you saying?
So I've had a lot of people that I've kicked out. I've also had a lot of people that have come in like that and worked with me over a few months and actually become and realized what it is that they're really like and doing and why that's not good. I don't know, some people, especially like for me, I remember the first time I knocked someone out, it was full self-defense. It's kind of bittersweet. Like, you're like, oh, thank fuck I was capable of doing that. But you're also like, my God, like, I just did that to another human being. That wasn't a nice experience. That could have been me. I mean, like, you realize your power. You're like, oh, wow, I really shouldn't do this. This isn't something I should be doing on the casual. This is a very much break glass in case of emergency kind of deal.
Keeping that in mind, do you think that in the future it will affect whether techniques like Krav Maga will gain popularity or decline with the amount of people that would go and study it or learn it, in the sense that the human element will almost kick in and make them hesitate?
Probably not. People have always wanted to fight. People like violence, whether they're part of it or not. Look how hugely successful boxing, UFC, and combat sports are. People like to see people fight. Conflict is an inherent part of human nature, unfortunately. So I don't think we'll see like a wokeness arrive where people just suddenly kind of all agree on not doing combat sports, because I think if we got to that level, we'll also be at a level for world peace. That definitely would be a good end game, but it's definitely not the reality. And I mean, especially in terms of martial arts, like boxing, kickboxing, etc. Like, it's a business. As long as it's commercialized and there's championships where you get paid huge amounts of money for champions. And self-defense, people are always going to want to learn to defend themselves. Self-defense has been around for years. I mean, you can go back hundreds of years, from like the 1800s, 1700s, and then you go even back further and look at, there's old like tapestries showing like knife techniques that are still used to this day. I mean, kata in itself, I don't know, do you know what kata are?
Sorry, no, I don't.
So kata are the range, it's a series of movements, usually in karate. So when they stand and they do all these moves in like a fluid motion, it's like a sequence. Ever watched The Karate Kid?
Yes.
Have you seen the sequels?
Yes.
He learns a series of movements, then he uses it in the final fight.
Yeah, I think I know.
It's in the second or the third one. It's one of the not the best ones. So, I mean, kata in itself was a form of writing down moves. So a kata it's a series of movements, but it's not actually how you would do a fight. You wouldn't, get into a fight and do this exact thing. What it actually is a series of movements, and the idea is that you break down each movement. Most people didn't know how to write in those days, so you basically turn it into a dance routine for memory. So self-defense has been around for thousands of years. The second we started fighting each other, self-defense has been around. The second that guy fought back.
I know that you've said before that a couple of people in sort of official positions, maybe that bodyguards, for example, and bouncers and stuff. I'm kind of interested into what the sort of, let's say, police, what their take on sort of Krav Maga is, and if they look into a fight that has happened, and obviously people know what they're doing, they're fighting against each other and causing some sort of damage at least. Do they have a negative take on Krav Maga, or do you think, from your experience, from your knowledge, your opinions even, that they're glad that people can defend themselves?
That's a great question. I love that question. All right. So, God, it's such an individual question as well, right? So I know a lot of police officers, a tall lot of police officers. Like I said, I've been in confrontations where afterwards I've had to talk to the police officers for them arresting and pressing charges, or victim the witness statements, or them questioning me to know whether I'm the guy they should be putting in the back of the car, right? Every single time I always tell them, I say, look, man, I just so you know, like, I'll have a gun. I have to defend myself. Because unfortunately, a lot of they usually hurt. So it's a harder position to kind of argue out of when you're standing there fine and they're not. Police individuals, so some of them are kind of like respect that. I mean, at the end of the day, a policeman's main duty is public safety, and if they feel that what went down was in the interest of public safety or done to protect someone, then I'm sure there's some policemen out there that are like, no one should know how to fight. Seem like a bit of a silly position, but yeah. And I've also had lots of people come and who are policemen come to me to learn, because a lot of policemen don't know how to fight. And actually, it's one of the most infuriating things to see that the people that are meant to protect us, actually, a lot of them have no idea how to even control and restrain a person correctly. So again, one of the fights I had to control and restrain a guy, this drunk guy, for 15 minutes before the police arrived. Wow. 15 minutes I had to be in danger for, right? And this isn't, if he was in control, he would have been pummeling me, right? And I wasn't pummeling him. I was controlling him in a way to make sure that I was safe, that he was controlled and he unable to attack me, right? And that's significantly harder. If I could have just carried on punching the guy and smashed his head into the dirt or whatever, it would have been a lot easier. It would have been over and I could have walked away. But that's unfortunately not the correct thing to do. I've got the skills to be able to control a guy. So I'll use that because, well, it's better for him. He ends up less hurt. Better for me because I don't have to argue why I continue to pummel this guy that I was in a dominant position on. But if more people knew how to control and restrain, or even just handle themselves, maybe that might be a better way of doing it. But who knows? I don't really have a stance on it.
Do you have any sort of unusual, quite funny stories from interacting with students when you were an instructor? Anything that kind of you would look back and laugh, or you'd look back and say that was a highlight?
You know what? I can't particularly think of any specific examples that are like make really good stories. But I can tell you now, I'm literally got like a flash reel in my head right now of just awesome people, awesome times. You meet some really good people. And especially when you're training together, when you're fighting with each other, and I mean you're punching and kicking each other, and you're grabbing each other and throwing each other on the ground, or like trying to stab your mate and whatnot with a knife covered in lipstick, not a real knife, a fake, like a felt knife with you cover them in lipstick, and then like go at each other, and you can see where you get cut and stabbed. It's a lot of fun if you get a good instructor and you can make it fun. So I have a lot of very happy memories of training and teaching students, and also especially from a teaching point of view, watching students grow and learn a skill that you've given them is honestly one of the most rewarding things as well. And I don't think there's anyone out there that's taught anyone anything that wouldn't agree with me. Watching someone learn something from you is hugely rewarding. I was someone's Obi-Wan, you know what I mean? That's a great.
Not a lot of people can say that, so that's
exactly right.
It's definitely a win. I just came up with a question, but it goes right back to the beginning of the interview, and I don't know if you have time.
Go.
I wanted to ask you, you were just sort of describing yourself when you were younger, playing video games and so on, rather than necessarily being in the sort of sporty side of things. How would you approach someone or ask someone or discuss with someone that has the argument video games encourages violence in children?
It's not even nuanced. It's a ridiculous statement. It's just a ridiculous statement. I don't want to do that because I don't want to just brush it off, because it's quite brushing it off kind of means that I don't really want to answer it. But there's no proof there. We've been fighting as human beings for thousands of years, right? to argue that a video game causes violence is just such a ridiculous concept. There's like absolutely zero proof, zero evidence that that's the case. There's more evidence to suggest otherwise. There's more evidence to suggest that people who play video games are less likely to cause violence because they're out there. And also, fighting someone in real life is nothing like a video game. It's nothing like the same. Like I said, there's absolutely zero supportive evidence of it. It's a very right-wing, conservative American policy stance that basically I feel is more of a detraction of something that they use to take away from things like gun control, things that are needed. Like, oh, yeah, gun control doesn't work. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. But definitely, you know what's causing the gun violence? Video games. I literally saw on Instagram today, 3.1 billion people play video games, right? Half of those are mobile games. So some people will say they're not real gamers. So 1.55 billion people on the planet play video games. Most video games, in fact, all video games revolve around conflict, whether or not that's direct, violent conflict, like Call of Duty and stuff like that, or a game like Fall Guys. I don't know if you've seen Fall Guys. It's like a total wipeout. So you literally play this like cute little jelly bean that has to run around. It's like a inflatable horse, and you've got like 100 people. You've got to like get over the line first, push each other off the platforms into the slime and stuff, right? It's still conflict. So yeah, it's just I don't know. It's just a ridiculous thing. I hope that that's not an opinion you have, and I'm brushing off your opinion.
No. I just wanted to. I guess it's quite a different question from the previous one.
Yeah, it's a very different question.
but I don't know. The discussion of it is quite interesting in the sense of a lot of times people attribute trends or certain aspects of life to causing things later on. And I don't think it's as simple as that, because I'm sure you've come across in your teaching, there are a range of people out there and we don't know what's gone on in their lives and what it's like in their heads. So it's not so simple as a sort of A to B scenario. It's very different than that.